The restaurants you love, the food you crave, and the people that make it all happen. We tell their stories on the Paper Trails podcast with Albemarle Paper Supply.
What's going on, guys? How are you? Welcome back to the Paper Trails podcast. I am Nick Calgair-Mitros, your host of the show. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, okay? We are at Mama Ricotta's, and I'm with Frank Scibelli, chef, man, founder, the whole thing. Very excited to have you on the podcast. One of the biggest restaurateurs in Charlotte, and we were talking about that off camera, but super pumped to have you on the pod.
Well, thank you.
Frank, and excited to just chat and jam and learn more about your story and your background and the come up. I know a lot of people know of your restaurants and the end product. I want to talk about the come up, how it started, your thoughts, the beginning. And so very excited. This is episode 18, season 3. And if you guys have not seen the rest of our episodes or follow us, go ahead, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, all of the channels. We're all over all of them. And so excited to have you on. I appreciate you coming.
Well, happy to be here.
Thank you.
Looking forward to chatting with you.
Let's do it. Okay, so let's start in the beginning. Okay. Let's start where were you born, raised,
So
kind of childhood?
I'm from Springfield, Massachusetts.
Okay.
And grew up there, went away to boarding school in Connecticut, and then, you're Greek, I'm Italian, I have a giant Italian family. I couldn't get out of Springfield fast enough, so I came to college in the South. I went to Wake Forest.
Okay.
And then got an MBA from Wake Forest and ended up staying in the South. When I first got out of college, I went and worked for a company called FMI, that's a consulting firm in Tampa. And I was a couple years into it and got an opportunity to come work here for Raycom Sports, was doing a consulting firm. And we came up, and I was here for about a year, and they decided they didn't want to do a consulting firm. We hadn't even opened yet.
Okay.
And I was 27 years old, and what am I going to do with my life? And they paid me a little bit of severance and gave a lot of thought. And at that time, Charlotte really did not have mid-scale Italian. It had either finer dining Italian or it had like diner Italian.
What years? Okay, so
I
you
moved here in 91.
With the consulting firm.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes. And
Wake
then,
Forest, MBA, Florida.
Yep.
Tampa.
Moved here in beginning in 91.
Okay.
And then was working for that company a little less than a year.
Okay.
And then we ended up, they shut it down.
Okay.
And then opened Mama Ricotta's in August of 1992.
Okay. One question before: were you going down this consulting path? Was that your plan? Like what?
I always felt I come from a family of entrepreneurs, right? So my uncle owned a produce company, my dad owned a travel agency. They're all typical, second generation Italian, and they came and did their own businesses and very close family. So I always felt I really thought I was going to be an entrepreneur, but I had no idea what. And I never thought it was going to be a restaurant business, really.
So before Mama Ricotta's, growing up, high school, college, did you work in restaurants at all?
So I did. I was actually, we had a beach house in Old Saybrook, Connecticut, and I used to work in a place called, first it was 100 Acres, and it was Cherry Stones, an Italian seafood place at the beach.
Okay.
And it was busy as can be, and I started bussing tables, I think I was 15.
Okay.
And then 15, 16, 17. When I was 18, I started waiting tables there.
Okay.
And then I did that through college. And I liked it. Most of the time I had worked there. One year I actually worked another place. There was a finer dine place that I felt I could make a little more money and work there. So not knew the front of the house, but I had some exposure to the front of the house. But I liked to cook. When I went to Wake, there's very little Italian food in Winston-Salem. So I would call my mother and say, Mom, how do you make linguine with clam sauce? And she would tell me over the phone on how to make linguine with clam sauce. And then I would call her the next week and, how do you make tomato sauce? Or how do you make whatever? And then I'd go home and I'd learn a couple of things. But I was sort of, starved for what I wanted to eat for Italian food.
Yes.
There was some good food in Winston, but it was just not like what I wanted.
Sure.
And so I started learning how to cook, and it was something I really enjoyed doing.
What was Mom's favorite dish that she cooked growing up that you loved? I'm just curious.
It's on the menu now, chicken bianco.
Okay, so
and she still makes it better than we make it. She just does she's just got a really natural touch with food. It's chicken with prosciutto and mozzarella with wild mushrooms. And at the time, you just used domestic mushrooms. And then, if my father wanted them, so a lot of times we didn't have mushrooms because he didn't like mushrooms. So if the kids were home and we had mushrooms in it.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So Mom was a big cook?
She's a great cook.
So do you think you found some inspiration in cooking from Mom? Like, do you think
No question. And then him having a travel agency, we traveled a lot.
Okay.
Food was a big deal.
Okay.
Wherever we went, it was where we were going to eat and what we were going to eat. And so, got exposed to a lot of good food. And, New England has a lot of good food and a lot of good Italian food. And it's everybody's Italian-American stuff's a little different because their family cooks it a little bit different than anybody else does.
Sure.
I'm sure like Greek
Same
food,
thing, yeah.
Same sort of deal. And
Yeah.
so, and then my aunts and uncles, who's from different parts of Italy, and they make it differently than my mom made it, right?
Yep.
So that was actually really, really cool to learn just growing up.
Okay. All right. So
opened up in '92.
Okay. I was going
down the street.
Okay.
It was actually
So not
the next
here.
shopping center down.
Okay.
And it was a 39-seat restaurant, and figured I was 27. Figured if it didn't go well, I would do something else.
Sure.
And then, fortunately it did well, but it was just a lot of, I know like it was first 6 weeks, we were literally standing around looking at each other. And then I got a really good review in the Charlotte Observer and we got packed immediately.
Really?
And we'd go on an hour or 2 hour wait. And so they were talking about earlier, I had seen a place in Florida when you have a big wait like that and people don't want to leave. You take a pizza and cut it up small, and you give people some wine, and you give them a little bit of a little pizza.
Okay.
And it keeps them engaged, and you end up because 39 seats is kind of hard to make money. So it was just a lot of work.
A lot of turns to make money.
A lot
at
of
39.
turns to make money.
Okay. So, all right. So you're before Mama. So you're a consultant. You're doing that whole thing. Masters. Is there in the back of your mind a thought that you want to have a restaurant? Has that always been a seed of a dream inside of you, or it's just the situation happened, you're out of work, you got a little bit of money, and you love food? Like, explain to me kind of the thought process.
So what happened was, I find myself without a job, and I start reading all these career books. What color is your parachute? And I read one called Wishcraft, and it said, essentially do what you love, and everything else will take care of itself.
Okay.
And I love food and I love people, so, maybe I might like the restaurant business.
Okay.
And then I start looking around and realize that there's some things missing in Charlotte that are in other cities, mid-scale Italian being one of them.
Yes.
And I felt like I would open up, that it was a good opportunity to open mid-scale Italian, and see how it did. And the first menu I opened, it was 10 pizzas, 10 pastas, 2 or 3 apps, and 2 or 3 desserts, and that was it. It was a small menu.
Simple.
Yeah.
Which is, just for anybody listening, that wants to get into entrepreneurship, that's maybe a good idea. Like, you're learning a new venture, keep it simple, don't overcomplicate stuff, right? Don't, in restaurants it's big menus or, complicated whatever. In any business, right? It's a good idea, I would say, because you're learning too. You're walking in a field that no one's walked before. Maybe you had a mentor, maybe not, I don't know, but a lot of times people don't, and they're just kind of walking blind. And so I think that was very smart of you. Was that intentional to keep things?
Yeah, you keep it simple. Like, it's like a sports analogy. Like, you've run a few plays really well instead of running a lot of plays poorly, right? So we were like, let's make sure we can execute what we have really well, and then go from there.
I love that.
And Italian food, to what I like, there's stuff that's more complicated, but I like family style grandmother cooking, right? I like simple food. I don't like foams, and that's not what I eat. I like simple food, and I think a lot of people are the same way.
I agree with that. Okay, so what are, now we're going back now because it's years ago. What are some things that you learned from the first restaurant that you opened? Let's talk about like things that people don't even think about, like permitting or space, number of bathrooms there's so many things that when you're entering.
How much time do we have? we got a lot we got a lot going on.
Is there anything that stands out to you that you're like,
there's
wow,
a ton.
I didn't know these 2-3 things, and I was caught a little off guard, but those 3 things that I learned really helped me with store 2, 3. Is there anything that stands out to you?
I'll tell you a couple good ones.
Tell me.
One was don't pay people on Friday.
Okay.
So we used to pay people on Friday, and so we pay people. Everybody goes to go cash their check. Most of them don't come back. It's me and the chef on a Friday night, no one else in the kitchen cooking, and we're having to cook. And so all weekend it was like that, and we sort of figured out, and I'm like, I'm not paying these guys on Friday, because they went and they, guys went and got, who went out drinking, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
And so I'm like, we're not paying on Friday anymore, and changed that immediately.
Love that.
And then with the funny part of it is, like, we had a dishwasher, and he walks in Sunday. He thought he was scheduled off. He just walks in like nothing ever happened.
Yep.
And I like almost hugged the guy. I'm like, I'm so happy to have some people back.
I love that.
That was a good one. I think giving people feedback as employees and trying to develop, that was something that, like lessons early on, and how do you develop people and what your style is going to be. And, we talk about it internally. We want to be, if you've had a good coach or a good teacher, they're pushing you and they're challenging you. If someone tells you you're great all the time, you're never going to get developed. I'm
it's
a big, pressure makes diamonds, right? So you want to have people develop, and not everybody likes that, but the people who like it love it, and they thrive and they grow and they develop. And that's sort of something we talk about internally, but that's something I learned very early on.
Well, you never learn from your wins. You always learn from the losses.
It's because not even a loss. It's like someone has to say, "Hey, you do a good job with this, but this might be a better way to do it."
100%.
Right.
And constructive criticism, I'm not saying is a loss, but like you said, when there's only positive affirmation, you think you're the cat's meow and you have everything figured out. It's like, you know what? You never stop learning. I mean, life is all about learning,
We're
right?
Actually, as a company, we want to hear what you have to say. We don't want you to say everything's great if it's not great, because it's, we want to hear negatives just as much as positives.
I love that. Okay, so you open up, slow for the first 6 weeks.
We get a good review.
Good
we
review.
Get busy.
Crushed it.
Still, first year I think we did 300,000.
Okay.
Second year we did 400,000. Third year we did 500,000. And then we had an opportunity to take the space next door. There was a printing place next to us, and we had an opportunity to take the place next door. And but it was a zoning issue, so I couldn't open for lunch immediately. I had to get a variance.
Okay.
And so we opened up for lunch, or for dinner only, and we sort of continued to grow. And we did that, I think we were in that location, I think, till 01, 02, and then we moved to this location. We were actually just getting ready, and this is where I'm a big believer in like destiny, and God sort of taking care of you.
Absolutely.
But we were going to move to somewhere else, and literally the week I was going to sign the lease, this location came available, and we moved here, and it's been sort of great ever since. And we've been here since then.
Yeah, I definitely believe in just divine providence and God helping. I mean, when my cousin and I started our paper company in 2008, we rented a 5,000 square foot warehouse that my dad had next to his restaurant in Albemarle. And after 4 or 5 years, we had outgrown it and we needed some more space. Now, he had a 10,000 square foot warehouse. It was not attached, a separate building on the same property. And for different reasons, we weren't able to get that, which was at the time was the most aggravating thing. I can't believe you. I'm your son. I'm your nephew. You don't want to, And then thank God it happened, Frank, because literally a month and a half later, we found a 5 times the size, a 25,000 square foot warehouse a mile away that had been closed for 7 years. So it closed, and it was an eggplant. Closed in 07. We found it. We bought it in March of 14. It came with 11 acres, and we stole it. I mean, we bought it for. It was exactly, and so it's just it's exactly the same thing as we're talking about.
You don't think it at the time, but it's true.
You don't.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good lesson for anybody listening or watching this is that, the saying is true. When one door closes, another one will open. You just have to have the patience and the vision to see it through, right?
Absolutely.
So now, when you move here, right? You said 01?
Move here like 01 or 02.
Okay. You still had just one location?
No, we had done, so I had done a, one of my biggest mistakes, right? So we had a guy who would come work for us named Alex Bacchini. He was a chef from Italy, and there was a restaurant at the time called C Italian, and he comes to work for me, and he said, oh, the guys who own C Italian are trying to sell it and go back to Italy. And so they said, oh, they're really doing $2 million in revenue, but they only say they're doing $1 million in revenue. It's really going to be a good deal. And so worst deal I ever made. They were really only doing $1 million in revenue, and they actually we did a little bit less than that our first year.
Wow.
And so we had that for a couple of years, and then we converted it to Mama Ricottas, and we started doing well as Mama Ricottas, and then out of the blue, one of my managers came to me, and he had an inheritance, and he said, hey, we'd like to buy it. And he made me an offer that was really good. And at the time, we'd started getting into catering here.
Okay.
Because we're right between Atrium and Novant.
Yep.
And just randomly, we started getting pharmaceutical reps asking us to do catering.
Sure.
And so the catering business started taking off. And so I sort of had been losing money. I got a great offer. I ended up making money on the deal.
Yep.
And then I get into catering and then grow this business.
Okay, what year did you take over? So 91 you opened there.
94 I did. 92 I did there.
92 you did
94, 95 I did C. I had it for like 2.5 years.
Okay, so you had 2 years under your belt of one location before an opportunity came to you.
Yes.
For number 2.
Yes, and then lost my ass.
Okay.
And it taught me how to manage money. It taught me how to manage, and it was an old Greek guy. He was a restaurant guy, and he said, do whatever you need to do. Make $1 a week. Every week, at least be positive, right? And so I, worked on creating a budget and so we, to this day, we have a mini weekly P&L that we look at, and this is our budget, and this is what we have to spend, this is how we make money.
I love that.
And so it really taught me how to manage the business part, and then we sort of took off from there.
So you learned how to manage the business part just by default because of...
You didn't have any money. It was tight. You were losing money. One restaurant's making money, the other restaurant's losing money. You're running around like a chicken with its head cut off, cooking, thinking I can. So whatever restaurant I stayed in, I would fix, and then the other one would sort of get into disarray, and then you sort of learned how to manage people a little bit better. It taught me how to become better at that. So that was really sort of a tough time.
I think that's very, I think a lot of owners don't get good at that, which is why sometimes they seem to just continue to struggle. If you can figure out the numbers, the budgeting, living below your means, don't take too much money out of the business. Make sure the business is healthy. I mean, I think that's one of the things that we have done right, Frank, is my cousin and I have never paid ourselves anything extravagant, even to this day, 15 years later, but the business does well. It's healthy. We just added an addition to our company. I mean, there's things that you can do when the business is healthy that when it's starving and you're pulling too much out, you just can't. True?
Yeah. It's, one of the things that same guy taught me is he said, it's a penny business. You make them, you make money by the penny. Yeah. And you have to just manage that.
It's wise words. I love that.
Yeah.
Anything else that you learned from going from 1 to 2? Just because I think that's, and I may be wrong, but going from 1 to 2, I think is when you really start learning, because you can't be at both locations.
Right.
So now you really start. Someone. Exactly. Now you understand delegating, empowering, teaching, training, trying to make a Frank number 2 so they can think like you, make decisions like you, right? Because wherever you go, like you said, things were they were organized, they were systematized. So didn't you learn from scaling to that first location?
Yeah,
that stands out.
That was one. I think the big thing is, one of the things that I really just had to open my mind to, and I think a lot of people struggle with this, is they are not going to be another Frank. I have a certain set of skills. They're going to be whoever they are, and they're going to bring some things to the table that I didn't have.
True.
And so really it's like rounding out your team, and you got to think about it like rounding out your team. They may never have the food skills, but they're better in the dining room, et cetera, whatever it may be, in that it's really about rounding your team out rather than trying to replicate me or anybody else.
That's a good point. Just find the strengths of other people and then put the best team together.
It's like going back to a sports analogy, right? Like you need a scorer, basketball, you need a scorer, you need a rebounder, you're going to need a guy who plays defense. You don't need you need everything, right? And so
I love that.
If I can round it out with people who know things that I don't know, that's how you're going to grow.
I love that. Okay, so 92 first location, a couple years later, number 2, sell that off. Catering starts taking off. Sounds like in the mid-90s, late 90s.
Mid-90s, and then opened Cantina 1511, and I don't remember the year I opened it. You may have to look up that timeline. So opened Cantina 1511.
Okay.
There was a guy named Dennis Thompson who started Lone Star Steakhouse.
Okay.
And Dennis was coming in the restaurant, and he said, I've got this location. Is there anything that you'd like to do with it? And from doing consulting and traveling a lot, we had a client in Austin, Texas, or Arlington, Texas, right between Dallas and Fort Worth. And I got to be really good friends with them. As a matter of fact, the day I got my job offer in Charlotte, she gave me a job offer. She wanted me to work with her. Okay. And I ended up taking North Carolina, which is, fate again, right?
Yes.
And so her and her husband were foodies, and they used to take me to really good Tex-Mex and really good barbecue.
Okay.
And so I was like, that's something that's lacking in Charlotte.
Okay.
Mexican and barbecue. And so opened up Cantina 1511, and we did really, really well with it, and then opened another location, and I sold it in 2012 to Quantum Restaurants from South Africa. And they
how did that come about?
A phone call out of the blue.
Someone just
literally
calls
I'm
you?
sitting in my office, and they said, they have 300 restaurants at the time. They had 200 restaurants worldwide, and they were trying to come to the United States.
Okay.
And the main guy, Ben Fitmatter, was a very, very sharp guy, and he wanted to come to the United States. He wanted to grow Mexican, and it would help them with a visa. That was there was a deal about investing in American business.
Sure.
And so literally it was sort of an out of the blue thing. And I had just started Bad Daddy's Burger Bar.
Okay.
That was taking off, right?
Okay.
Starting to really take off. And so I put 100,000 in one location and 105,000 in the other location, and Dennis and I were, one I owned 55, the other one he owned 55, so we were essentially 50-50 partners.
Okay.
And we sold it, I think it was like 3.2 million, and it was sort of, and they've since, so then they take over, they have it about a year, Ben dies. The rest of the guys were all accountants, so it ended up going out of business in the US. Now worldwide they now have 300 restaurants. They have like a coffee concept called Mug and Bean from South Africa, and they did very well, but they grew, I think, to 4 cantinas, and then they contracted and ended up going out of business a couple of years ago, but it was a great thing for us.
Anything that you learned from that first kind of exit? Like that first, or even starting
a ton. I mean, honestly, how much time do you have, right? So like understanding financials, understanding what a buyer is looking for, understanding the importance of being buttoned up financially and what your operations, because no one's going to want to buy you if you're a sloppy mess, right? So you've got to show that you know what you're doing and have systems in place, and all that's important. So it started literally driving from here to Cantina. There was a location on the left. It's still Bad Daddy's. That's the original Bad Daddy's. That was, and I had 3 little boys at the time, and they like burgers. And I'm like, I'd maybe like to do burgers, right? So it'd be something to do. So opened Bad Daddy's, the first one.
Is that how it started? You just literally were like, my boys, I like burgers. My kids like burgers.
Yes, but I'm a crazy homework guy. So like at the time, I'm thinking, Upscale Burgers, I think is going to be, this was 07. We opened it up at the end of 07, right?
Okay.
And all the burger chains were starting in other cities, like Shake Shack was starting to take off. There was one called 5 Napkin Burger out in New York that was starting to take off. The Counter, which is now not even there, Smash Burger was starting to take off. And so all the burger businesses were starting to take off. I thought it was very good timing. We opened up and we grew that to 13 locations, and we sold that in 2015. And so, when we owned it, we were top 25 burger in American Zagat's. We were top 25 burger in American USA Today. I was on the Steve Harvey show for #2 burger in America. And we did very, very well with that, and was able to sell it and make a great exit.
So Bad Daddy's was your third concept? So
it was my third concept.
Italian, and then Tex-Mex.
And then burgers.
And then burgers.
Somewhere in there, I opened Paco's Tacos too.
Okay.
Right.
Is there anything, at this point with 3 locations and scaling them, right? Cantina, 2 locations, Bad Daddy's, all that. Is there anything that you're learning about the style of food, or is it literally a systematic approach where this is what you do, menus, do you know what I'm saying?
The business part, I think the business part of running a restaurant is the business part of running a restaurant.
So it's the same, nothing, okay.
I really don't. I think it's, it's...
Doesn't matter, the food doesn't matter, it's just, it is what it is.
I think there's some subtleties of service. There's subtleties like, we have a sommelier, beverage director for the Italian concepts, right? I don't have that for Midwood. I would probably we would look at a beverage director for Midwoods, but we have, the wine component is so important here, so that you need to make sure you're not behind the game for what competitors are doing.
Yeah.
So there's subtleties between that. there's some styles of cooking, like barbecue, you're cooking, 12, 14, 16 hours ahead of time. You're prepping the meat the day before. It's a different flow to it. But then the barbecue's made and the turns are quick.
Makes sense.
Right? But Italian, you're making it to order.
Yeah.
So much in Italian food is literally made in the pan right then.
Yeah.
You're not making your sauces and your base products, but there's some subtleties like that. But running a restaurant's running a restaurant.
Yeah.
The biggest learning curve was Yafo Kitchen because it's fast casual.
Explain that.
So we're full service guys. That's what we talk about. We're really, I don't know if you ever heard the term in business, but core competency. What's our core competency? We're full service guys, right?
Yeah.
We've had to learn, and we have a great team, but we've had to learn. We have a guy named Kevin Flack who was an early Zoe's guy. He went to work at Zoe's when it was like 50 of them, and he does a great job. And Shai Farjian, this was sort of another like dumb luck. Shai Farjian's our chef, and he's partners with me. He's from Israel. He was a major in special forces, falls in love with a girl from Charlotte. He gets out of the military, he's cooking. He cooked in one of the best Thai restaurants in the world, is actually in Tel Aviv. He cooked there.
Okay.
Then he goes to New York and he cooks for David Burke, and he cooks all these great restaurants.
Yep.
And he moves, she's in grad school, and they want to settle down in Charlotte. And I'm looking to open a Middle Eastern restaurant. And he's looking to open a Middle Eastern restaurant, and I find him, and he comes to work with us, and he's partners. Now he oversees the 3 Yafos and the 2 Kaye Souls. And then the fourth Yafo, he'll be partners also in the 4th Yafo.
What made you want to get into Middle East? Like, how is that? I feel like that's kind of left field a little bit.
Not
or
really.
No?
I mean, so it's sort of a timeline of my life, right? So my roommate in college was Persian. He's from Shirah, South, but he's American. They the mom and dad are from Iran. They're immigrants, no different than my family was immigrants,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
And they, my mom would come for parents' weekend and cook pasta.
Okay.
His mom would come and cook hummus and grape leaves and stuff, and I'd never really been exposed.
Okay.
And we had friends from Springfield. Springfield's very ethnic, right? So we had Lebanese and Syrian friends, and their food was different. It was really good. So I got exposed to it, and then his mom would come, and he was one of my best friends. He was my roommate. And so we'd go, in the summer, he'd come to my house, I'd go to his house, and we'd see each other.
Yeah.
And so I got exposed to that food.
Okay.
And then when we sell Bad Daddies, right, we got to be very good friends with the investment banker. And the investment banker, we were just sort of talking at dinner, and he said, people are going to realize that the only ethnic food is not just Italian, Mexican, and Chinese, right? That the American public is going to understand that there's Greek and Israeli and Korean.
He said that.
He said that to us, and
Interesting.
And it really like a light bulb went off. And then I'd seen Kava. I'd seen there was a company called Naf Naf, which has actually changed a lot from when it originally opened. But I thought that would be something.
I've seen one in Fort Mill actually.
On top of but it's changed a lot. It's been sold a couple of times.
Has it? Okay.
We went to the original one in Chicago, and it was really. But and we came up with Yafo, and we hired. Shai's a great chef, but we hired Enot Admony, and she's on all over the Food Network. She cooked on Iron Chefs. She was on Iron Chefs a couple times to consult with us to help create the menu and help source ingredients and stuff like that. We got to be good friends with her.
Wow.
And that's how we created it.
Okay. Are you glad that you sold Bad Daddies?
I'm happy that I sold Bad Daddies because now, it was great timing. It was when Shake Shack went public. And it just seemed like everything sort of aligned. It was a good time to sell it. Could I have maybe held it if, we had 13 locations, maybe 17, 18, 19. But I think it all worked out great. So 2015, I was down to 3 restaurants. It was Mama's, Paco's, and the original Midwood.
Because you had sold off?
I sold off Cantina.
Cantina, Bad Daddy.
And it sold off Bad Daddies.
Wow, so that was a big adjustment maybe?
Yeah.
I mean, you had 15 and 217 plus 3. You went from 20 back to 3.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. I love that. One thing that just in our conversation right now, Frank, that is evident to me that I think you're really good at is I think you're really good at seeing white space. What are people not doing? What is early, right? And you're paying attention to the market, to the scene, what's happening in restaurants. You're noticing, burgers, New York. You know what I'm saying? Is there something to that?
Opportunities, but the other side of the coin, I think, which is really, because people ask me this, the more important side of the coin is things that we feel we can execute. Because, that's the problem in the restaurant business is everybody thinks it's easy. And they go, why don't you open a sushi place? Because I don't know anything about sushi. And it's something that, and I'm not really a sushi eater. It's not my, I eat a little bit, but I'm not passionate.
It's not your thing, yeah,
I'm not passionate about sushi. I don't want to learn everything there is to learn about sushi. So I want to, first is, can we do it? And is there a market for it?
Wow.
So those both are important. You have to be able to do both.
That's a lot of wisdom there, honestly. I think it's a good first question to ask. Can we execute? Oh, this is a great idea. Yeah, but can we do it? Is there a path that, is our skill set there? Or can we put a team together to execute the skill set, right?
Yeah.
I like that. That's fantastic. Okay, so when did you get into barbecue? Was that after Bad Daddy's?
When we were working on it. No, it was while Bad Daddy's was still there. I opened the first Midwood on Central Avenue.
Okay.
And that, learning lesson there.
We
opened up.
Go ahead.
So felt like barbecue was something that was lacking here. And so opened the original Midwood, and it was too small, and you couldn't make money. And my partner, Eric Fenner, we were talking, and we laugh about it because he said, you can say, I told you so till we're both old men, right? And so we were losing money at the first side, and I just said, I just think it's too small. I think if we expand it, I actually think we're going to do really well. And we expanded, and it became by far our most profitable restaurant at the time.
Go ahead. And the way that came about was you just visually saw that there was a gap, a white space in the market, and you're like, you know what, I think we can execute on this. Let's do.
So even since you've been here, right? So there was the old school like Bill Spoon's, and then there was Max, and I think that may really have been it. There were a couple chains in and out of Charlotte. I think Red Hot and Blue was in and out of Charlotte, but there wasn't much in the way of barbecue at that time. And it's a very barbecue-rich state, but not in Charlotte. And so we went to one of the guys we had gotten to be friends with. His name's Rob Walsh. Rob won a James Beard Award as a cookbook author in Tex-Mex cooking, but he also was from Houston. He was the writer for the Houston Chronicle. He introduced us to, first people was Good Company Barbecue, and we went and spent the day. We had to make a donation to their favorite charity, and we went and spent a couple days with them, and they showed us some stuff, and then we started learning and leveraged connections, and since then we'd sent our guys we go to Texas A&M, had a professional barbecue camp for pitmasters, and we went there with our team. We went there and learned. They have meat science, they have everything, and so we really worked at getting better, and we send our teams there still. It's been a while since we've sold it because pre-COVID, but we actually something that, now a lot of my team has gone to it.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I think another thing that's interesting that I love that you do is that you're not beneath bringing people in to teach and train you. Like you're like, you know what? Okay, I don't know barbecue. Let's bring some people in. Right? I mean, I feel like that's, I feel like sometimes the ego, which to have a healthy ego I think is good, but at some point the ego maybe can keep you from learning or growing or developing or capturing the strengths of other people, right?
We talk about it. I think there's an importance of being self-aware in this business, right? I think you have to know what you're good at and know what you're not good at, and what you're not good at, you'd like to get better at. So if we're not, if our service needs to get better, how do we get better at service? If we want to learn more about our food, this is our craft.
Yep.
And anybody who's a professional about their job, I don't care what you're doing, you want to keep working at your craft,
Amen.
Right?
Yep.
But not everybody does.
Yep.
So we continue to try to get better at our craft.
I think it's just impressive with your experience and the selling companies, and now you're just getting so much knowledge. You're still like, you know what? We don't know this. Let's go to Texas A&M. Let's learn. Let's get send our team there. I think that's such a good way to do it because find a mentor, find somebody that can help you. It's okay. Like, you know what I mean? It's okay to ask for directions. It's okay to ask for help in a business or a startup or a new venture or a new concept, right? So
I think so. And I think there's a lot of people, a lot of times your direct competitors aren't going to help you. And that's part of business. That's right. That's part of life. But learning from other areas and learning looking at other types of businesses and who's better at maybe and how do they do like the hotel business or an accounting system. We try to get better at what we do. We just had a very good, sort of a huge moment. We got invited to Cibus, C-I-B-U-S. It's the largest Italian food show in the world.
Okay.
It's actually bigger than the NRA show in Chicago.
Wow.
It's a worldwide Italian food show. It is in Parma. We got invited to go there. And one of the things we realized is that we're big enough. We wouldn't have been big enough in the past, but we're now big enough to buy more direct. And so one of the things that we do as a company is we never want the cheaper product. We always want the better product. And it always sort of frustrates our vendors because they'll come in and say, oh, I've got a cheaper bottled water. And we're like, but we don't want a cheaper bottled water. We want that bottled water, right? Maybe I can buy it cheaper, but I want that bottled water.
Sure.
And so what we found in the Italian food business is you've got a farmer making the cheese, literally.
Sure.
He's selling it to a distributor, who's selling it to a distributor in New York, who's selling it to a distributor in Charlotte, and there's a lot of markup.
Sure.
And so what we've learned is we can cut two of those guys out, buy more direct, and we have the volume and the capital to do it. We're actually getting, instead of getting a 24-month age Parmigiano Reggiano,
Sure.
we're buying a 36-month age Parm for the same money because we've cut some people out, so we just improved our quality for the same product. For the same price.
And that's as of recent? That's just...
We've always worked at doing that, but we've gotten better at because we have, we're buying olive oil direct now, with less middlemen involved. We're buying our vinegars more direct now, and it's drastically popped our ability of what we get. And we have enough volume that, in our business and in any sort of like, the vendors don't want to bring in something unless there's movement.
Sure.
And there's enough movement to bring in. We're of a size that we can... We're selling the product, so they don't mind bringing in the product.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Anything else you're learning recently? Anything else that's happened over the last 12, 24 months that you're just like, you know what? This is interesting that I've just been learning recently. Or is there anything like food-wise or business-wise or scaling-wise or anything? I'm just curious now, just selfishly asking this question.
I think it's a, I think we've hired some really, really good young minds, Julia being one of them, who has a very good, fresh perspective on looking at our social media. I don't know if you've looked at our social media much, but she has drastically upgraded our social media.
Love it.
I think the reel and the strategy, and we've learned sort of what we're doing and trying to, like, one of the things that's interesting about Midwood is we have smokers in every store. We, bring in prime beef. We bring in very, very high level product. And I think as you grow in the barbecue business, people think like, oh, are you just shipping it to the store? No, we have pit masters in each store and we're making it. And she's done a very good job of communicating that story. And so, it's a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, video's even better than a picture, right?
Amen, yes.
And so she's done an amazing job getting that. So, we've focused on communicating our message through that. And I think that's been a good lesson for us as a company.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so concepts that you currently have now. So we've got
Calle Sol,
which amazing.
Cuban Peruvian.
The Plaza at Midwood, I've been a couple times. I love it every time so just side note, okay. What else you got? You got Mama Ricottas.
Mama Ricottas, Little Mamas.
Little Mamas, which is explain to people that maybe don't know what's the difference between Little Mamas and Mama Ricottas.
Little Mamas is a slightly scaled back menu. It is a little bit more upscale than Mama Ricottas. It's got a big emphasis on fresh mozzarella. One of my partners, Chef Tom Durnis, who's been with me forever, who's a very underrated, people do not realize we've actually been communicating him. Tom's probably one of the better chefs in the market. Nobody knows him. He worked for Wolfgang Puck. He worked in Vegas. He worked at Spago. He is super talented, and he's a New Jersey guy. Grew up around Italian food, and became really a nerd about mozzarella.
Okay.
And so we've gone We've gone up to New York, New Jersey to learn how to make mozz. We went to Wisconsin to the Belgioso factory to learn how to make mozz with them, and so we do made-to-order mozzarella there.
Okay.
That he's really perfected. And it's unbelievable. It comes out warm and gooey. And Tom's, but so a little more emphasis on the fresh mozzarella there.
Okay.
And so it's been good. We have 2 locations of that, and we're going to be looking for our 3rd one. We'd like to do a Huntersville location.
Love that.
And the Paco's Tacos, we have another Paco's Tacos coming.
Okay.
It's just not been announced yet.
Okay.
Right, so we got another Paco's coming, and we have 3 Yafo kitchens. We have a 4th that we're doing out in Ballantyne.
Okay, love it.
So that's really 7 Midwoods. 6 we run, 1 is at the airport.
Okay.
And so that we would look at sort of the following year, but right now that's where we are.
And is there one brand out of all of those that, I mean, is the goal to continue to scale all of them? Like
Yes.
what is the vision that Frank has for FS Food Group and your restaurants?
Continue to scale all of them.
Okay.
I think it's going to be location dependent and what we feel that fits the location.
Okay.
But I think we really like all of what we have.
Yeah.
And I'm not ruling out that I wouldn't do another concept, but for right this second, I'm very content with what I have.
Okay.
We would do variations of what we have. We had actually looked at doing, we're friends with some brewers, and we'd looked at doing like a beer garden with Mexican food. And so that's something we've kicked around, and there's other concepts we've looked at, and variations of what we have. We looked at doing a pizza place, sort of as an offshoot of Mama's. We have very, very good pizza. We have it at one of the Little Mamas. We don't have it at the other one because we couldn't put a hood in it. So,
Gotcha.
Interesting. So the original Little Mamas doesn't have pizza because we just couldn't put an extra. There was no space to put another hood in.
Gotcha.
But moving forward, it'll have pizza. So we've thought about doing a pizza place would be something that would be kind of fun.
What do you think would be the most, just in your thoughts, what's the most difficult part of that, of your
scaling?
vision, of scaling that many concepts? Is it just finding the right teams, the right people to help you execute? What in your thoughts?
Developing the teams. I mean, I think we've got some really, really great people, but I think it's just, it's not capital to, people think like, oh, if you just have more money, I mean, we have money, we're fortunate, we're well capitalized, we don't need anyone else's money, but like developing the people to run the restaurants right, that's a big challenge.
Yeah. And then maybe wrapping up here in a little bit, okay, what is the most, what's the word? What is the most satisfying part of being in the restaurant so far? I mean, you've been in since '92, right? So this is a long time that you've been in the game in Charlotte. People know you, know of you, know your restaurants. Looking back now, what is maybe like one of the most satisfying parts of like, what? Like,
I mean, I think that's a great question, but like it's kind of an easy answer because there's 2 things. One is, you make so many great friendships with customers over time, and I think dealing with the public isn't always easy, but like by and large, people are great.
Yeah.
And I've made so many great friendships. Unfortunately, everybody else, you remember the person who's more difficult, but really by and large, far and away, everybody's great to deal with. You meet so many nice people. They're happy. They have who had an anniversary, who got engaged here. Like literally, we've had kids who parents got engaged here work in the restaurant.
Wow.
So that's like, that happens, So that sort of friendships and lifelong, I mean, it's really incredible. And then the other thing is really seeing our teams succeed. We've got, my CFO was a server. The woman who runs the catering department runs catering sales, was a server. We do a great job of developing from within. And a lot of them, one of the things I learned after selling Bad Daddy's is most of my key people have an opportunity to invest and be partners in what we do because I want them to. I was very fortunate I had a couple of very good sales. And that was, really transformed my life. And I want everybody else to have that sort of opportunity. So the people who come in and do a good job and, make us money, and we talk about treat it like it's your business, which means you're going to make mistakes. It's not like you're going to treat it like your business. And I made mistakes. They're going to make mistakes too.
Of course.
But the ones who come in and treat it like your business are going to do really well, and they're going to have an opportunity to invest in when we sell, which we have a plan we'll sell a portion of the business probably in the future to private equity, and then they'll grow it, and it'll create more opportunities for our teams.
So you do want to,
We'll sell at some point, yeah.
I love your answer about, because, it's funny, one of my employees asked me that, we were having lunch maybe a month or so ago, and they asked me was my favorite part of owning a company, and, and I said the same thing, it's the people.
Yeah.
It's the having a team and pouring into them and helping them, and when they're hurt or they're down, I can be there to support, or the customers, the relationships that I've built for 15 years now. Because yes, we're young, but we also we started young, and so but 15 years, and I'm only 38, but I remember when their kids were young and now they're out of college, and I've been with them the whole time, so and it's cool because at first they're a customer and now they're a friend, and oh, by the way, I also supply you a product. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a secondary thing, but I love that because it's same answer for me.
That's you're a good businessman, because that's really part of it. Like, you didn't go there to be their new best friend, but you've developed a friendship from doing a good job
over time.
Right,
Yep.
Yeah.
I think the last thing I'd love to hear from you is a piece of advice for anybody that wants to grow in their industry, whether they're in business for themselves or whether they're an amazing number 2 or number 3. I think sometimes people feel pressure that they have to be the man or the entrepreneur because that's sexy and cool right now. But you know what? The number 7 guy at Facebook is wealthier than all of us combined, okay? So these guys, but he knows he's a number 7. He's good at that role. He's there to support the the number 6 and number 5. And so what are some thoughts or some advice to anybody out there that just wants, as we're wrapping up 2024, going into 2025, they want to advance, they want to move forward, they don't want to struggle, they want to just be better.
The don't want to struggle is never going to happen.
Okay.
I think that's just not realistic because for so many reasons, right? Interest rates, COVID, whatever, you name it, whatever things pop up as obstacles, you're going to get speed bumps. Like I talk about it with my kids all the time. Like, you need to anticipate you're going to have speed bumps.
It's good.
And not get rattled when you get them.
It's good.
Because you're going to get them. Like,
sure.
I don't
care who you are.
Right. And it might be a big one, it might be a little one, but you're going to get speed bumps and you need to learn how to deal with that. And if you learn how to deal with that and your competitors don't, you're that much farther ahead, right? So I think that's a big deal. And I think that we talk about it, and I believe this, and I have a lot of friends who own businesses, but we believe the restaurant business is a team sport. It is not an individual sport.
100%.
And so your team's got to be, and you've got to think about it like that. That does not mean that you're an easy place to work.
Sure.
That means that if you got weak links, you got to get rid of because you got a team. You got to develop people. You got to do all those things. Like, you want to have a good team, it isn't just a superstar. Usually the teams that have a great superstar and a not good supporting cast aren't good teams.
You're right.
Right. So it's a team game. We think of it as a team game. And it'd be amazing, as all my friends will say, our business is a team sport too. The people who are successful, right? So they think those are big things to.
So your advice would be, to help out the team, be a team player. I know you had mentioned this earlier, but being self-aware, like know kind of what you had mentioned that.
I think if you're on it, and so if you're talking about it as an employee, right? If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and you're not getting where you need to go, I would switch jobs. I would get in an environment where, and I mean this like if it was my child or someone I care about, you've got to you can control what you can do. Yep. You can come in, have a good attitude, do your best, take your work seriously, do what you need to do, and then good bosses, and they're not all good bosses. Good bosses are going to try to reward that and they're going to try to grow you.
Sure.
Bad bosses may not. So you've got to get in the right environment. But once you get in the right environment, treat it like it's your business, treat it like it's, but that team thing I think is important.
Love that. Any last thoughts?
No, you got great energy. Very good to talk to.
I love that. I love that.
Energy,
man, this was awesome. I think this was so good. I think anybody that's listening to this, whether you're in the restaurant, especially if you're in the restaurant industry, but even if you're not, we went over so many different life lessons and character building traits that anybody listening to this and thinking about having a better year next year, a better quarter, a better month, improving your health, your finance, doesn't matter. I think we can apply the same principles because success is success. You could literally going the extra mile, being a team player, not being selfish, come early, stay late.
Just try hard.
Just try hard.
Do your best. That's 100%. Just try hard.
Show up and try hard.
Yeah.
These are all basic fundamental things that if you can just, I would pick 1 or 2 of them, right? Like you can't get good at everything at the same time. Pick 1 or 2, and then develop those and get better. But Frank, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on.
I think this was amazing. If you guys have not tried any of, listen, side note, especially Mama Ricotta's, because it's my favorite. I've been here 25 times and eating the same chicken parm dish every single time. It's amazing. Jorge, I've brought you here many times, okay? But any of the concepts Follow these guys' social media. They're on the grow. They're opening new locations. Check them out, support them, support the local business owners. I love doing that. I love supporting that and promoting that kind of stuff. And so, anyway, again, thank you. I hope you guys enjoyed episode 18. And with that, we'll see you guys in the next episode.